Welcome to Pilates Teacher's Manual, your guide to becoming a great Pilates teacher. I'm Olivia, and I'll be your host. Join the conversation and the Pilates community on Instagram at Pilates Teacher's Manual, and visit buymeacoffee.com/Olivia Podcasts to support the show. Today's chapter starts now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today is a Pilates Teacher's Manual first. I am so excited to have two special guests on the podcast today, Elizabeth O'Rourke and Mora Babineau. They are co-owners of Studio 47 Pilates, which has two locations, one in Warren, Rhode Island, and one in Mashpee, Massachusetts, and they are both joining me on the podcast. And I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to bits about it, to hear their experiences and to hear, how they've made this incredible studio together. So thank you so much for coming on, Elizabeth and Mora. We'll jump right in. What is your first experience with Pilates? Can you tell me about it, Mora?
Excellent. Well, thank you, Olivia, for having us on today. We're very excited. Elizabeth and I like to say that we were doing Pilates when Pilates wasn't the cool thing to be doing. So 17 to 20 years ago, Pilates was in its infantile stages as a fitness modality. It was sought out by individuals, but it wasn't on every street corner, as we are hearing a lot about Pilates now. So my first introduction to Pilates was actually through the dance world and through the fitness world. So I come into this industry via being a dancer in college, and then after college working in corporate fitness and doing all of the fitness things, step aerobics and boxing and all the things that we do in fitness. And then at that point, started doing a little bit more mind-body work and getting introduced to some Pilates classes. And then at that point, also then trying to bring in Pilates with fitness. So to try to, bridge the fitness people over into the Pilates industry. And we'll talk a little bit more of that, I'm sure, later in the podcast. But that was my first introduction.
How about you, Elizabeth?
Yeah, so very similar, and I kind of feel like a very cliche story. I was a dancer, and I danced in college, and I was kind of dabbling after and didn't really know what I was going to do. And I had a friend was like, "You've got to try Pilates," because I was kind of done. I knew I was never going to be a professional dancer. So they were like, "You should totally try Pilates. You'd be great at it." So my first experience was in a very classical studio. I was instantly hooked. I loved it. It had like the grace and the flexibility. And again, I was fresh out of college and I was like, I have no idea what I want to do. And the studio owner was like, "You should totally get certified." And I was like, why not? So that was my journey. That was my experience.
It sounds like you were very right place, right time in terms of, very naturally transitioning to be a teacher. Was it like that for you, Mora? Were you also inspired to be a teacher because you were around it and like this was your jam?
Yes. So I have been teaching dance since I was in high school. And I have been a fitness instructor since I first got certified in 1993. And that was my kind of side hustle throughout college. So yeah, so the teaching part has always been part of my career journey, just making the change to be a Pilates instructor about 16, 17 years ago.
I think that is such a valuable thing. And I know, as you said, Elizabeth, it's a cliche to come from dance into Pilates, but teaching movement in a lot of ways, like there's a lot of skills when it comes to teaching, the terms of like interpersonal skills, the way you present yourself, the way you share instructions with people, that is a very natural crossover. So I know why that cliche is there, because it makes total sense to go from teaching one movement modality to another. So you did a classical training program, Elizabeth. What was your training program like?
So interestingly enough, the woman who referred me was a classical instructor and studio owner, but she actually sent me to Physical Mind. So I am actually grateful at this point in my career. So I started at the Physical Mind Institute in New York, which I don't even think it was called contemporary Pilates at the time, but it was not classical training. So I know that, again, this is back in like 2004. The idea of working in neutral pelvis was so exciting and groundbreaking and, on the cutting edge of science. So that was how I started. And then I have since bridged over to balanced body.
What about you, Mora? What was your training program like when you went through it?
Excellent. So I also stepped in and did the Physical Mind Institute training program, which at that point, the comprehensive training was not broken down the way that we break down training modules now. At least I'm a balanced body educator. So the way that Balanced Body has broken down the training program is through different modules, like Reformer 1, 2, 3, Mat 1, 2, 3, Cadillac, ladder barrel, and chair. The Physical Mind comprehensive training was show up and we're going to teach you everything. And that's how we learned. So we were all comprehensively certified at that point when we finished our training programs. And it was a very different time period. It was definitely more of a little bit more, as a Pilates apprentice, you were to be seen, not heard, and you kind of tiptoed around the studio and watched what was happening. And there was not as much two-way dialogue as we have now with our apprentices and trainees.
That's so interesting. I'm excited to hear more about the training program that you offer in your studio as well, and how you've changed it and, how you've adapted it. But it's very interesting that, like, I can see the pros and cons to a modular system where you're doing the chunks the way Balanced Body does it, the way a lot of training programs kind of break things down. But I also kind of think that there's a lot to be gained from learning everything simultaneously because of the overlaps, like because Pilates lends itself so naturally to, okay, we're doing this exercise here, but we also do it on the barrel, and we also do it on the chair, and we also do it lying on our side and lying on our back and with straps and without, So it's like, for our lives now, I understand how modules came to be, but I think that they're like, if we could set aside time the way those really intensive overlapping programs are, if you could just like take a pause of your life for a year and just immerse yourself, like, I do think that would also be really awesome to do.
Well, and what else was really interesting too is you were kind of all in. So it wasn't a weekend and then off you go. So you were affiliated with one studio and you went mine was every Friday from like 9 to 6, and you were just immersed in all of that. And then you came next week. And so there's something to be said about that as well, and how it's different now.
Definitely. I mean, it reminds me of like, oh, go ahead, Mora.
No, I said that, Pilates in and of itself is a system. And so I think understanding the intricacies of the system of the work is really important. And that's something that we're trying to get back to in our training program, so that clients and trainees understand that the mat work is what you're doing on the chair, and what you're doing on the mat is also what you're doing on the Cadillac. And so you can't silo or isolate the equipment. It was designed to work as a system. So there were some really good pros to that.
I love that. Thinking back to yourself as a baby teacher when you were very new and you were still perhaps even that apprentice tiptoeing around the studio, how have you seen your teaching change from where you were to how you teach now, Mora?
Excellent question. So I think it's hard to remember when you first start out once you've been doing something for so long. But we all started with note cards, and we all started with, notebooks full of information and exercises. And I think, once you've been doing something for a while, I take for granted that now I work off the cuff. I see who's here. I can literally plan a class or a session by looking at someone's body. But that takes a lot of time. So I think as a baby instructor, one of the things you have to remember for newer people coming into the industry is that time you spend is valuable, and you can't rush the process. As we evolve, our students evolve. Now that we've been doing this for so long, we have clients that have evolved with us and continued on their journey. And, we're always learning. I think that's another thing to remember. You're never done learning. And I also think that the science evolves. To Elizabeth's point around neutral pelvis, some of the original terminology that we learned, the powerhouse and house for a mouse, and those terminologies have all changed. right? Now we talk about the inner unit, and we explain to our clients what muscles are part of the inner unit and how do we tap into that. So I think we're doing a better job as teachers as the industry has evolved.
How about you, Elizabeth? How has your teaching changed over time?
I think the first word that comes to mind is just overall confidence. With time it comes experience and comes knowledge. I feel like I have my whole bag of tricks, and because like the longer I've taught, the more tricks I have in my bag. So whatever happens to be thrown at me, whether it's an injury or a postural issue, I feel like I've got all these little tricks in my toolbox, and you gain those with all of your experience and all the different clients you work with and all the different workshops and the continuing ed you take. And so to Mora's point, never stop learning. And I also think I recently read somewhere, and now I can't remember, but it was how Pilates is like an intellectual exercise. And I feel like it's not just, squat or curl up or sit up. So there's this whole mind body connection, obviously. And I think that it really deepens your practice. And so us as teachers can pass that on to our students, and then they get more and more out of it. And I just think it's that time and having a lot of patience.
I completely agree, especially in terms of how you accumulate tricks in your bag. I think to new instructors watching an experienced teacher, they're like, oh my gosh, how did you know to adjust this or do this? And a lot of times the answer is because you tried a bunch of things over time and you found that this one worked pretty well. And so that becomes your go-to. And like you said, it's because you tried lots of ways of approaching something, or it's because you learned through having to work with someone who had difficulty getting up and down off of the reformer. So you have tricks to help get people up and down because you needed to find them. Necessity is a great mother of invention. So I completely agree that with that experience, you just get better at it because you've tried things that didn't work, and you just don't keep doing those. You do the ones that do work. Go Mora, yeah.
I also think to Elizabeth's point is working on different bodies. So it's great when you're in your training weekends and there's 10 really fit Pilates instructors and you're training them, and then you get out and you teach a foundation class, and it's wait, what happened? How do I do this? How do I do this? So the observation time that you spend as a new instructor and the practice teaching hours, which you will continue to evolve in, are really such an integral part of the training process to be a Pilates instructor. Because we really are trying to connect that mind body, and there is a level of precision, control, breath. All of the Pilates principles are really the guidelines for your teaching practice.
So how did you two meet each other? Is it through the Physical Mind Institute? Were you like in a coffee shop and you're like, gee, I wish there was another awesome Pilates teacher around here that I could open a studio with? Like, tell me that story.
So I had a ballet studio, and one of my students' parents was like, oh my goodness, my friend is moving to town and she's fabulous and she's a dancer, and you guys you would totally hit it off, and you have to meet. And the rest is history. We have this funny story. We had a small refrigerator in our studio, and it was a glass front. And, back when it was a much smaller scale, we had Fiji water for our clients, when it wasn't, very expensive and whatnot. And they were all lined up perfectly. And we always say like we had each other at the Fiji water because we're both OCD, and we like just totally hit it off. And now here we are 16 years later in 2 studios, and oh my goodness, I think we're at 10 other instructors and 3 apprentices. I know.
That's incredible. So how did Studio 47 Pilates come to be, Mora? If you can tell me your origin story of your studio.
Sure, yes. So Elizabeth said we had the dance studio, and so we bought 3 reformers, and we set up shop to teach Pilates. And so the majority of the classes that we taught in the early days were mat classes. And because we are both physical mind trained, one of the hallmarks of the physical mind training is something called standing Pilates. So Joan Briebert, who is the founder of Physical Mind, wrote a whole book. It was a huge part of our training, was standing Pilates. So to me, that was a nice bridge between fitness and Pilates. So we created our own thing, right? We did a lot of standing Pilates classes, and that really, we were able to then bridge the fitness people over into the Pilates world. So in terms of Studio 47, we kept evolving. I think that's one of the things as a business owners that we're really good at is knowing when something's working and knowing when it's time to turn left. And I think, all of the pivots that we've had to make over the years have kept us on the forefront of the industry, not just relying on, we're going to keep doing mat classes. Well, no, here's what I say. If you want to come to a mat class, you're going to come once a week. I need you 3 times a week. So I need to offer you something different. So you're coming 3 times a week. One day it's a standing class, one day it's reformer, and one day it's stretch and rolling on a Friday. So I think in terms of Studio 47, we actually started out as Barrington Pilates. Our first studio was in Barrington, Rhode Island, and it was next to Barrington Ballet. So in keeping with the evolution, we then realized that we were kind of stunting our own growth with that as the name of the studio, where it felt like it was very limiting to that close geographical area. So we then, continued to evolve, and we changed the name to Studio 47. Not that clever, because our studio was at 47 Maple Avenue. That's where the 47 comes from. But we have since changed. We've moved studios, I think 3 or 4 times. We've kept, outgrowing space. And then we closed the dance studio. We took over the dance space. Then bar became a thing, and then we put bars in. So we're kind of always staying ahead of the trends in the industry. And then we most recently moved to our larger location in Warren, Rhode Island, which is just, across the bridge from Barrington. So that way, again, we're opening up more geographical area for ourselves to attract clientele. And with that, we just opened our second location on Cape Cod last July 1st. So we are Studio 47 Pilates by the Sea. So our studio in Warren, it happens to be waterfront, and our studio on the Cape is close enough to the beach.
So one of the things that you shared is that one of the hard things, I should say, about being on the cutting edge is that you have to kind of pave your own way. So I know that when you're opening your studios, Pilates was not yet mainstream. And I don't imagine that you had 1,000 Pilates teachers knocking on your door asking to, be part of your studio. How did you kind of get the word out about Pilates? Like, obviously you did, because your studio has adapted and evolved, but how did you meet this need for teachers, meet this need for more classes? Because you're only 2 fabulous people, and even if you're working 40-hour weeks, that's a lot going on. So how did you address that?
So just how Mora was saying that we've kind of constantly evolved in terms of our offerings, we like to say that it was literal just blood, sweat, and tears. And like the one word I truly will use to describe us is like, we are hustlers. Like we put in the hard work. We would wear our Studio 47 t-shirts to Starbucks and be like, does anybody want to come try Pilates? We printed out flyers, and we would literally put flyers or business cards under windshield wipers in parking lots. I mean, this is before social media. This is before, we had a website. It wasn't interactive. There was no booking software. Like, it was a landing page. It didn't go anywhere. Maybe it had a phone number, like, God forbid you actually call a landline. And, we had a clipboard with paper and pen, and our clients, their class card system was index cards. Like, I'm saying this, like, I'm making myself feel so old right now. But this was back in 2008. There was no Mind Body or Moments or, Mariana Tech or any of it. And so it was literal just, it was word of mouth. Every once in a while we would, pay the very expensive advertising fee in a magazine or the local newspaper, but it truly was word of mouth and, bring a friend for free, or it was slow and steady. And I think that is so important for anyone who is a new instructor getting clients or anyone who is new to being a studio owner, it is slow and steady, and it's one day at a time, and it is not going to happen overnight, I promise.
And I think one more thing to add to that. I think this is also super important in terms of building longevity in an industry is, we were then approached, are you guys going to offer yoga? Should we do TRX? Should we do X, Y, and Z? And we said, nope, we teach Pilates. We are Pilates only. And everything we've ever done, that has been the central piece of our business. We've never strayed. We don't offer spin. We don't offer yoga. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've been able to pivot when changes like COVID happened, right? We were able to pick up and move left. And I think because of that fact that we have always been a Pilates boutique studio. That's what we do. That's our teachers are certified to teach Pilates. I don't try to pretend that I'm a strength trainer. I'm not. I teach Pilates. So I think it's great to weave in these other things, but also stay true to who you are as a business owner. And when you can really focus on something, like McDonald's sells hamburgers, right? Like they try to sell other things. Nobody buys that. They're not as successful, right? Do one thing and do it well. And that's what I think has really helped us with a little bit of our staying power.
And also to follow up, you had asked about instructors, because even in this day and age where Pilates is totally having its hot moment and, certification workshops are full and it's like, it looks so cool and fun to be a Pilates instructor, we really also pride ourselves on a lot of our instructors are homegrown. It is not common that someone moves to the area or knocks on your door. Hey, I have a full certification under my belt. I have all this experience. And I'm looking for a new studio to teach at. Like that happened once. And our instructor, who is still with us after I think 9 or 10 years, she moved from LA. So she's amazing and she's fabulous. Everyone else, so they started as clients. And we were like, hey, you'd be really great at this. But it takes a long time. And we always say, we can teach you what's in the manual. We can help you like with choreography. We can help you with injuries. We cannot teach personality. And we have had instructors that have, I hate to say audition, but maybe they've had like an interview process, or even after being with us for a few months, that it's not the right fit and it's not the right vibe. And I think that is really important as well. And I'm proud of us for when it hasn't worked. It's been like, okay, that's all right. We can go a different way. But really important to stay true to the integrity of your business and like your little vibe that you have going on.
Definitely. So tell me about how your training program has evolved, because you've got amazing clients who are interested in Pilates and you've won them over to the dark side of teaching. How did your training program kind of evolve and grow and change?
Yeah, most recently, as of 2 years ago, I actually became a balanced body educator. Prior to that, most of our staff had either bridged or has done the balanced body comprehensive training program. So, as training programs phased out, Physical Mind kind of phased out, Balanced Body stepped in around 17 years ago as kind of the premier training within the industry. And that's, most of our staff now, if not all, are comprehensively certified through Balanced Body. So having that has been really important as kind of a unifying factor in our staff. So any new staff coming in, to Elizabeth's point around, a client that is maybe interested or we see an interest with them, they've gone through the Balanced Body training program. So we are a proud satellite location at our Cape Cod studio of Boston Body, which is the premier authorized training center for Balanced Body in the Northeast. They have a robust training program that they've had for years, led by Zaina Gold. And we are excited to have come on as a satellite location working with Boston Body. So it's been a really nice relationship and has given students another option of a place to go. As these training programs are getting more and more popular, having access to reformers at a training weekend is key. So we're able to provide that, another option for our students.
That's incredible. That's really nice to have that commonality, and kind of a lot of times studios, you have to find a common language to speak. Because training programs can be very different in how they approach things. So I love that you have that, unifying factor of of training. That's really great. Hi there. I hope you're enjoying today's chapter so far. There's great stuff coming up after the break too. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening and visit buymeacoffee.com/Olivia Podcasts to support the show. There you can make a one-time donation or become a member for as little as $5 a month. Membership comes with some awesome perks, including a shout out in the next episode, a monthly newsletter, a monthly Zoom call with me, and more. You can also visit links.oliviabioni.com/affiliates to check out some sweet deals on products I use and love. Now back to the show. I'm going to ask Mora, what was it like becoming a master educator? That's so cool and amazing. And I know that's how you knew Tabitha as well.
Yes. Tabitha was in my training program. Honestly, it's been one of the best, and most fulfilling honors of my career. I think I've always been a good teacher. And I think as an instructor, to now be able to teach teachers is kind of the next evolution for me in my personal development and growth. Making sure that I'm instilling the right values and techniques for the new and next generation. So it's quite a process. You apply for the program, you were interviewed for the program, you spend 2 10-day time periods out in Sacramento at the Balanced Body headquarters, going through the trainings. And it's 9 to 6 for 10 days in a row for two times. So it is a commitment, both personally and professionally. And then if you pass through the program, then you can become an educator. So most recently, I was at the Pilates on Tour in Arizona, working with some fellow educators there, teaching some workouts. And so it's a really fun next level community for me to be a part of as an educator and a teacher.
That is so cool. And Elizabeth, I know you wanted to chime in about being a satellite location, I think, for training.
Yes, I was going to segue off of, yes, we're so excited and honored to be this satellite facility. And it's been a great addition for the Cape studio. And it's really interesting because what we've done and what I think Maura and I are really good at is, so you take this workshop and then you're kind of like, well, now what do I do? So maybe you're taking classes somewhere, maybe you're an hour away, maybe you're 30 minutes away. And so over the years, we've very slowly and now a little more strategically put together like in a whole apprenticeship program and a mentorship program, because it can feel very lonely while you're going through your training. And most of the time, your master educator that you're with for the weekend, you might be able to email them and say, hey, can I have a quick call? Or, hey, I've got this one question, but you don't have that point person to guide you. And even like the silly questions, like, what do I do about a playlist? What do I do about teaching a multi-level class? I mean, there's so much, more than just learning the actual repertoire and the exercises. We found that it was so important for any trainee to have this home-based studio. And so we've kind of, over time, we've cultivated it and it's gotten much more streamlined. But it can be really important to have like a little home-based studio and, find like a little apprenticeship place that you can carve out your own little corner.
I love that. And that's something that when I started talking with Mora on Instagram, that was the first point that she was like, I would love to talk about apprenticeship because I think that this is a missing ingredient and so important in the teacher training process that, you even when you graduate, it's like the process continues. Like, it's like, good, now you've got your certification that you know what you're talking about, but like there's more. So Mora, is there anything you'd like to share about apprenticeship or, what you offer apprentices who are in your program or at your studio?
Yeah, so this is why I think this is if not the most important piece of your training, and it's we are evolving by the minute. I think this is a piece that we have undervalued for a period of time, and I think it's now that we're turning out more teachers in a as opposed to when Elizabeth and I were doing it, I had 2 people in my training program. I mean, it was very much, now we've got 10 to 20. So if you've got all these people coming through your programs, how do we maintain the integrity of what we're teaching? And I think having access to a master instructor, having access to your educator, or even a comprehensively NCPT certified staff person that you can turn to and ask questions and guide you through that next phase of your program is super important. I think we're really just kind of seeing that now, kind of the real value of this. Right now for us, for our program, we take no more than 2 apprentices, usually in a year time period. So if you're working with us, you are getting a lot of observation time with us, hands-on teaching with us. We offer our apprentices the ability to teach community classes, which are offered at a reduced rate, a smaller number of students for those. So it really gives them the hands-on experience that really completes your training program.
I love that because I see a lot of people who come out of their training program and on paper, they're done. But in reality, there's some gaps in maybe how they're approaching things like programming. Like I've worked with newer teachers who maybe things that come totally second nature to us. Like if I'm using this piece of equipment, I'm going to use it for more than one exercise. I'm going to thread it through the whole class. But you might have someone who's like, we're grabbing a magic circle for footwork, and then we're chucking it for the rest of the 45 minutes. And you're like, all right, that was a choice. But you don't know that until I was looking at a student's program that had 6 pieces of equipment used in their one class. And I was like, that seems like several. And could we use fewer? So having that person as a resource, having the ability to ask questions, and especially also what I'm really loving about what you're sharing is you're encouraged to be new. You're not expected to be experienced when you're new. You're expected to be new. And you've really created a system to support people in gaining the confidence you've talked about, Elizabeth, that just the more you do it, the more confident you feel, the more tricks you have. And then having access to that resource and that guidance, that is A, what this whole podcast is about, and B, I think absolutely invaluable to the people you're working with.
Yes, I think if you were to ask, and we did obviously prior to coming on this, we asked our apprentices for feedback. They all said hands down, the experience as being an apprentice was tremendously valuable. It's something that they wouldn't be where they are today as instructors without that piece. So as we're looking to continue to build our piece of the business, we're now going to be launching a mentor program, which is going to open up access. It's going to be online. So I think that's something else where all of those different things, programming ideas, working with level classes, client retention, all of those things that are not in your manual, but those are a piece of what we're doing. You're seeing this now as I'm saying it to you. This is very trendy right now in the industry. We're seeing a lot of, what you didn't learn in the manual, which is great. I'm glad we're touching upon this. And I think, if you're a newer instructor looking for a program like that, look for somebody who has some season. Look for somebody who's been doing this for a little while. I think they're going to give you the best information on that.
Definitely. You had mentioned about COVID being a big pivot point for you. And COVID's one of those things that is over but isn't over. But can you tell me about what happened for your studios during COVID, how you changed it, and what maybe you've kept from that time, if you'd like, Elizabeth?
So yes, I actually think the pivot that we were, I'm going to say forced to do, ended up being such a silver lining on the back end. Was it stressful to go through? Absolutely. Were there conversations with the landlord? Absolutely. I mean, I think everybody was in the same position here. So for us at our Warren, Rhode Island studio location, we had a space for all of the auxiliary equipment, which included 5 reformers. And then we had a big open space that was for mat and bar classes. So we would have 16 people max in our, little studio space. So when we were allowed to reopen about 12 weeks after we were initially shut down, we were now allowed to have 4 people, including the instructor, in that square footage. And it was like, okay, that's impossible. You can't, that you do quick math there. It's not going to work. So what we ended up doing was separating and putting the reformers into the mat and bar studio, and then keeping all of the auxiliary equipment in the other. So now, because it was two different spaces, we could have 8 people. So this was now a little more manageable. And we had been offering smaller group reformer classes, but we were ready to kind of go, and we were able to increase our 5 reformers now to 8. And it was a wonderful pivot for the business, because now we're solely an equipment studio. I mean, yes, we have mats, and yes, we have the arcs, and there's a place for all of that, and it is incorporated in all of our classes and sessions. But there's also something that's so wonderfully addicting about the Pilates reformer. I mean, that's my like one true love. But clients want to touch something, right? So like I can go on YouTube and get a instruction for Pilates mat or Pilates circle, but you get to touch a piece of equipment, you get to play with it, you get to experience it. And the power of the group, I just think, can be so motivating and fun, and people are ready to be social again. So we completely got rid of our mat and bar program, which honestly we had talked about over the years. Like, it's hard to maintain. The instructors putting out a lot more effort, partaking in more demonstrating. And we basically, COVID forced us, it made the decision for us. And now it's been wonderful.
There is definitely something magical about the reformer. And so it's just not like anything else. And it really is the thing that people fall in love with. So I love that is the switch you made. I'm sure it made lots of clients very happy. Yes, Mora, chiming in.
I think also too, in looking at staying with industry trends, when we opened 16 years ago, a group reformer class was unheard of. I mean, Pilates was solely one-on-one. That's how you trained. That's how you took. It was one-on-one. And then maybe you got to do a duo, a trio, right? That was, a scheduling nightmare. But anyway, but so I think now where we've evolved to with Pilates Reformer as a modality in group fitness is phenomenal. I think we're able to offer the benefits of Pilates to more people safely. So I think where the trend is going, I'd like to see, I think 10 is a good number of reformers in a group studio. That's my personal opinion. I think you get a lot more reformers in, you're a little bit limited on what type of choreography you can do, because you'll have more variability in your class. But so we have found that to be our sweet spot. And to Elizabeth's point, you can do mat reformer at home. So if I'm going to come out, I want to touch equipment, and I want to be motivated, and I want to be instructed. So I think it's been a good win for us over the past couple of years.
I think that the community aspect was something that COVID really kind of highlighted the importance of it, that as much as it is, exercise is good for you. Yes, Pilates is amazing. Also, yes, but the fact that there's a teacher there, that there's other people there, that just like accountability piece that, they're almost counting on you. And like, even if you're doing something really hard, like other people are doing it with you, you're not alone. Like, we're all struggling together through that teaser. And that social component of like, you really do make friends at the studio. Like, you really do, like, it brightens your day. And like, I know as a teacher, there's clients that I love to see, that love to see me, and they just like light up you while you're there. And yeah, I do love group. I love one-on-one. I think my schedule is a little bit 50-50 in terms of doing group and then doing one-on-one sessions. But you're right. Like, there's this trade-off, right? Because you work with more people, so you can have more positive impact when you have more people in your class. But then if there's too many people in the class, people don't feel seen. It just becomes like, I taught at a yoga festival once, and you had like 70 people, and like, you don't get to say hi to them. You don't know any of their names. You're just kind of leading them through something. So there's definitely a trade-off in terms of class size. I'm glad that you found a size and a space that works for you all. You've shared this kind of woven throughout, but can you tell me, based on your experience, what you've learned while teaching? What is advice that you would give to a brand new teacher?
I would say for brand new teachers, and I'll tell my instructors this all the time, teach Pilates. It works. So we get on Instagram and then there's all, oh, I got to worry about the choreography. No, you don't. Teach Pilates. It works. That's what you are. You are a Pilates teacher. Teach the 100. Teach the stomach series. Teach side splits. Teach Pilates. We don't need to constantly reinvent the wheel. All of that stuff is fantastic. But as a new instructor coming in, teach the work. And that's how you're going to get good at it. And then 2 years down the road, then get a little creative. But don't stress yourself out about getting creative to keep up with Instagram. So I think that's one of the things that I teach. I tell my trainers all the time: turn off social media, and no one is really going to actually do that in your class. And I think when we kind of remember, like, teach the work. I had a multi-level class last week. I had 10 people in my class. I had a professional dancer with a foot injury, a young girl. I had an L5-S1 spinal fusion. I had a dementia patient, a stroke victim, a knee replacement, and a breast cancer survivor. Now, I know all of these because I know I'm their instructor. That's my job. They don't know. Did everyone get a good workout? They did, because I taught Pilates. And I think we have to remember that teach the work and there's value in it.
I love that, because there's, like, everyone wants to think out of the box, but the only way you can effectively work out of the box is if you know the box really, really well and you know where to make that one little adjustment, that one little variation, add in that prop. But you can only do that when you have a really firm foundational understanding of Pilates. And I love teach Pilates, it works. That might be the new tagline, because that's fantastic. That is so true. What about you, Elizabeth? What would you recommend for a brand new teacher?
I think just put in the time. Especially with privates, I think when you are newer to teaching and instructing, I think privates is the best way to start. That's how we have all of our apprentices start before they jump into community classes, because you're going to be nervous, right? And then what I like to tell everybody is, your client, they don't know. They don't know if you had on an extra spring. They don't know if you changed the box the wrong way. Just put in the time, get comfortable with it. And I think the other really important thing, even for seasoned instructors, is ask for feedback, especially from other instructors or from mentors. Ask for feedback and then be open to it. So look at it as positive feedback, constructive criticism. But I think you can really get some valuable information on how you're teaching or how you're communicating or your teaching style by having someone else say, you did a really great job at X, Y, and Z. I was a little confused with 1, 2, and 3 or whatever. And not so much the client, but have someone else observe you, that they know what they're doing. And it's really valuable.
I love that getting feedback piece as well, that we continue to learn and grow and change. And teaching isn't something where it's like, check, now I'm a Pilates teacher and I'm done and I just do this forever. Like Mora said, the science has changed, like best practices have changed. Every 5 years or so, we get new prenatal guidelines, and it's like, we want to pay attention. We want to change with those things. So recognizing that, like, we're not really chasing perfection. We're just trying to be better than we were before. And it's an incremental process.
I think just another thing is, don't over cue. I think we feel that we need to fill the space. Remember, we're giving people information in a language they've never heard before. So, and this is something I'm constantly working on in my own teaching style. Slow down, let it resonate. And I think that's hard to do, because we want to prove that we're knowledgeable and we want to prove that I'm going to make you find connections. Let the client have the experience. And I think that's another thing. I do a lot of test outs as well. And that's a constant piece of feedback when I'm doing a test out for a new teacher is, don't over cue, right? We got a lot of information to get out. Let's not, bombard the client. So that's hard. It's easier said than done. It's very hard to not feel like you need to talk the whole time.
Yeah. Feels like a a rep from Eminem where suddenly you get there and you're like spine and neutral and arms by your sides and feet on the foot bar and da 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 da, and the person's like, oh my gosh. So finding that balance, like one of my teachers told me that, you have 100% information in your brain. You're going to sprinkle out 20% at a time. And then once that lands, she called them chewable doables, you give them that thing, they understand that thing, then you can add another thing. But if it's just a laundry list, it's just exhausting.
Yes. And, one, two, three, move on. Some things may not be executed. Move on. Right. And so kind of also recognize when you threw something out there and it's not working, and how do we pivot? So I think that, we have our staff meeting every couple months. And one of the exercises we did at our last meeting was define your teaching superpower. And one of our instructors said, pivot. If I see it and it's not working, I'm gonna keep moving, because nothing's more frustrating when the client's not getting it and you're maybe not explaining it the right way or whatever, for whatever reason. It's 1, 2, 3, move on.
Yes, because Pilates is a process for students who are doing it as well as for learning how to teach it. So one thing that I share with new teachers that's very much in alignment with that is that this isn't the only session that you have with them. This isn't the only time they're going to try this thing. So if you try it and they don't get it, or they think they're getting it, but they're not getting it, and you try to correct it and they're not getting that, like you said, you let that go, because we're going to do it again next week. We're going to do it again later in the week. They're going to hear another teacher talk about it a different way. And it's just continually, I have a teacher friend who calls it polishing the stone, that it's like there's a diamond in there, and every time you work on it, you're just polishing it a little bit. And over time, with consistency, with practice, that's how we get there. So I love that you can't. Also, I think as a teacher, if you get hung up on this one thing not working, you're never going to feel successful, because it's not fair to you to say that, I'm going to define myself by this, whether or not they get this one thing in this one exercise. Like, that's not fair. Like, we got lots of time to work on that.
I think we need to remember the origin of Pilates was you went to Joseph Pilates' studio, and you were responsible for knowing the work. You were responsible for knowing the order. You were responsible for knowing the springs. And so I think we have to empower our clients.
That is one thing I loved about COVID. Did not love COVID, awful, but loved that clients had to take more ownership for things like equipment changes. Like a studio that I worked at, we changed all of the springs for all of the clients all the time. So they don't know what their footwork springs are. They don't know what their feet and strap springs are. I'm just running around getting bruises on my wrist trying to pull springs off 1,000 times. And so that degree of ownership, like you said, is really empowering to know, like, you get to play on this fancy piece of equipment, but not just play, like you really know what you're doing on it beyond, okay, they said teaser and I know this is the setup for it. Like, you really know how to make those changes and those adjustments. I think that's super cool and super important.
Yes. And I think, it's important as an instructor, you should, this is again something I'm working on in my own personal practice, is leaving my classes or sessions with clients feeling energized and not exhausted. And I think, for how many years I ran around and adjusted foot bars for 8 people, we don't do that anymore. Pace your energy.
Yes. It's much easier for every person to set up one jump board than it is for me to set up 10 or 12. Teamwork makes the dream work, and we're all a team in class. Is there anything else that you'd like to share, maybe about Studio 47 or about teaching, that we haven't touched on just yet? Is there anything else that I've missed?
I think, just as we look to the future of the Pilates industry, I think we need to, just to reiterate, kind of maintain the integrity of the teacher training programs and the teachers that we're turning out. I think it is an honor and a privilege to be a Pilates instructor, and because it takes time and dedication. And so when you get that certification, it's a pretty amazing achievement. So I don't want to see that watered down. I think we need to continue as an industry to uphold and even raise the standards. So I think the NCPT is doing that. That's the National Pilates Certification Program. They're creating an industry standard. I think that's a nice step in the right direction.
I would agree with Mora. I think when I have someone who will say, "Oh yeah, I have a mat certification," and I'm like, "Oh, you do?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, I went to a weekend," and I'm like, "So you don't have a mat," you know? So the integrity is such a big part of it, and this is not something that you can rush. This is not something that you can, there's a lot of time and money that goes into it, and it is very important that the time is put in. You can't rush it. And one of the things that I love about this industry is the older you are, the more experience you have, the more like revered you are. Like this is, you want to work with someone who's been, oh my goodness, my Pilates instructor is 75 years old and they've been doing this for 40 years and this is so inspiring. And like, that's really cool. And we don't see that a lot in our society right now. You know, and that's okay. But when it comes to Pilates, you are held a little bit higher, a little bit more on this pedestal when you have all this experience and time behind you. And so, yes, the integrity of the program is very valuable and very important. And I think if you are, whether you're deciding on what training you want to do, or if you're deciding on what instructors you want to hire, I think you definitely need to make sure that all the certifications are, in place. It's important.
Sometimes I wish that Pilates was classified like as vocational education, the same way it would be if you were like an electrician, because those do have boards and those do have standards. Like you said, the National Pilates Certification Program is doing something like that. Like I want it to be national. I want it to be international. I want there to be recognition for what you've put in, that it's not the same as like an 8-hour TRX training, that it is really intense and it really is comprehensive, and that what you are taught is a skill set. Like this is a career that you are being trained for.
We're also, going along with all of this, we're also trying to educate our clients that there is so much time that goes into this. And yes, we are learning about anatomy and we're learning about different injuries and surgeries and, all of this really important information that, yes, this is not like a personal trainer and that has its place. And I respect personal trainers as well. But with all of the requirements that come from getting your Pilates certification, so we've been, because Pilates is also very expensive, and we also shouldn't have to justify because of all of our training and all of our experience. And yes, you are going to get what you pay for. And so we've been putting some time and effort into even just explaining that to our clients. Like, do you know that your instructors went to this workshop this past weekend? Or did you know that, so-and-so specializes in blah, blah, blah. And it's important.
Yeah, there's so much value, I think, in the work that we do and the extensive training that we have. Echoing what you've shared before, that, it does take time and it can't be rushed. You can't make experience happen faster, but you can keep working on it as much as you can over time. And yeah, it is a different, I can see it from clients' point of view because I'm trying to think of me before I knew about Pilates, and it feels like, oh yeah, like other fitness modalities. But I think that sharing with your clients the fact that it is different, and I think they'll also see when they work with you, if they had a session with you or Mora, that they would see like, oh yeah, no, this is not just, okay, now we're going to do 10 bicep curls. Like, no, it's a little more than that. No, I love that. Is there any last thoughts that you want to share before we wrap up about anything wonderful, wild, wacky in the world of Pilates?
Like, be careful what you ask for. We could talk about Pilates all day long.
I know.
I think one thing that's interesting is when we were, kind of having a discussion prior to this interview, was, 20 years ago, technology did not have a place in fitness, and now technology does. And what are we going to do with technology in the future? And so I think, as fast as AI is moving, all of these different things are helping in other industries. I don't think you'll ever replace coming in and physically being a part of something. I think there's a place for technology, and I think it can help us, and it's, what it's done so far for the fitness industry in terms of, just booking softwares, and now we can text clients, and now, we can recognize when they come 38 times. There's all these wonderful tools we have. But I think as the world evolves, I don't see us losing the one-on-one. I don't see us losing the showing up for yourself in person.
Yes. Technology is great, I think, at connecting us. Like, I get to take my reformer class with my teacher in Australia, and I can't take it live because it's at 2 a.m, but I can do the replay. And there's value there, but I don't think that AI is going to replace Pilates teachers anytime soon.
And it's nice to see that now, I've been in the fitness industry my whole career, but now this is a legit career. You can make a career out of this. And so I think that's, we're seeing a lot of people making career changes into this field. So I think there's a lot of value that we bring to the table. And as fitness professionals, we're starting to be recognized.
We are definitely, I think, in that regard on the right track, because I also look forward to be a 70-year-old Pilates teacher with a wealth of experience to share. Well, thank you both so much for taking your time, for coming on the show and sharing your incredible journey and all of your insights and the experience that you've had teaching Pilates. Thank you for sharing about your studio and sharing that advice for new teachers. I appreciate you both, and thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
That was amazing, Olivia. Thank you. And if you're interested in learning more about our mentorship program, follow us on Instagram at Studio 47 Pilates, and you can get all the information through there.
Fabulous. I'll also include all of your information in the show notes for this show as well. Thanks for listening to this week's chapter of Pilates Teacher's Manual, your guide to becoming a great Pilates teacher. Check out the podcast Instagram at Pilates Teacher's Manual, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen. For more Pilates goodness, check out my other podcast, Pilates Student's Manual, available everywhere you listen to podcasts. The adventure continues. Until next time.